I was first contacted by Issa, who I had known previously, just casually, and she called me up one day and said, we're talking about doing an anthology series based on her dad's short stories. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. It just sounded like a fun idea. Just the one-line pitch on it was already intriguing. Anthology, never done that. How cool would that be? Philip K. Dick, and he wrote short stories. And where are those? And what are those like? And it just sort of built on top of it. It was a great idea from the get-go. It took a long time to put all the deals together, to get it up and running, to figure out the style of the show, or if the show had no style, and sort of how we would do it. It was about 5 years in the making to get us to this point, but it was a great journey, and I think the show turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it all started. The origin point for me was I got a call from Michael Denner, who said, "You work with the Philip K. Dick people. I want to do a show I want to create a series based on one of their short stories." So Kaylin Egan, who works with Issa, and I went over to see Michael, and we started reading short stories. And then Michael, about a month later, he said, "I have a great idea." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "I can't do any of these as a series, so let's do an anthology." And we all looked at each other like, "Oh, that's such a great idea, it'll never happen." And then Sony said, "You guys should talk to Ron," and because he knows what he's doing.
Theoretically.
And 5 years later, here we are.
Wow.
So, Liam, can you talk a little bit about your character and your anthology piece and what he's...
I can, but it would be quite brief because the story is this beautiful relationship between Essie Davis's character and Brian's character. I facilitate the drama of my character, so it's most definitely not about General Oldham.
But he kicks ass.
It's what's glorious about it is the whole idea of the drama aspect of the particular story I'm in I think is incredibly interesting. The fact that Brian's character, without giving too much away, Brian's character is not a particularly nice human being, certainly not a loving human being. Incredibly efficient military man, very successful. And I sent him off on an extraordinarily dangerous mission. And when he comes back, we are under the impression that he's had a sort of a cathartic moment, that he comes close to death, and he comes back and maybe has reevaluated his life. And that's what the incredibly clever thing about it is that this so-called reevaluation of his life, is it that, or is it something else? And therein lies the kind of the Philip K. Dickness of it, for want of a much better fucking phrase.
We sometimes say the dickishness.
The dickishness, yeah, that's what's quite Dickensian. And there's where the thing we love about Philip K. Dick comes in, with the relationship between the two of them. So it's incredibly tiny and mano a mano between those two, but at the same time it's a big philosophy of where is the world going to go if we don't look at that. So it's as small or as big as you want to see it.
Which brings up, what is the appeal of what do these stories represent overall? What are the power of these Philip K. Dick stories?
Well, I mean, I think what you see that runs throughout his work are the two questions. What does it mean to be human, and what is the nature of reality? And he plays with those ideas over and over again throughout most of his work, and we play with it too through all the episodes, from very different angles. But when you really get down to it, that's what these shows are all kind of exploring thematically in one way or another. But there's such broad ideas and broad questions that you can really dig into them in so many different ways and tell such a variety of stories, and it's really fun.
And from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, as Philip Dick's mind went through a lot of changes in terms of his own mental condition and his paranoia and the depth of his sort of hallucinogenic, everyday hallucinatory state of being. The stories from the 50s start out as almost satires of Pulp Fiction, written for Pulp Fiction magazines, kind of almost throwaways with these nifty ideas that are just mind-blowing. And by the time you get towards the end, there are extraordinarily tragic reckonings with, like, God and divine figures and and the interweaving of layers of delusion and pain and paranoia, and yet there's always this really identifiable character at the core, who's a person who is you or me, someone just kind of dropped into the world, like just a single human being dealing with forces that are so much more powerful and so much more evil and so much more complicated and so much more capable than me, the poor narrator or the poor subject of the story. And I think that makes them extremely relatable to us, particularly now when I think a lot of people feel adrift, where the stuff that connects us to the world is a little bit loose and we don't know where we are.
So I think this is for all three of you. Were you already, for lack of a better word, were you already familiar with or a fan of Philip K. Dick's work before going into Electric Dreams, or was it something where the ideology that he was talking about, like what does it mean to be human, what is reality? Are those the questions that bring you to his work, or were you already familiar with the intellect?
I knew his written work, but sort of because I knew the movies first. Yeah, I think Blade Runner is one of those seminal pieces.
That was my introduction.
That just takes so many people. You're like, who wrote this? And then you get the book and you start reading. You're like, okay, wait a minute. Now, adaptation. Oh, it's a whole different thing. So when I was a kid, I saw Blade Runner, and then I went out and got the book and was surprised. But it was still kind of enthralling at the same time. It was such a different story, but I could recognize the stories. And then you start reading other things. I wasn't familiar with the short stories because the short stories have a different publishing history. Some were in magazines, and some were in
collections with other authors.
Yeah. So I had never read those before this. So this was all new material to me.
For me, I read, like a lot of people, I read the Philip K. Dick's complicated novels, like in high school and college and after, like Ubik and Man in the High Castle and stuff like that. And I kind of stopped reading genre at a certain point, and then Blade Runner came out right after college for me, and my mind was blown. And I went back to reading the work, but then the movie sort of took it all in a very different direction, like particularly the Spielberg stuff. It just sort of and I lost touch, and then I got to know Issa, and I went back and read Ubik, and that was like, oh my, we're dealing with the different. I'm perceiving the literary quality in a much different way from what I remembered it to be, and then I only knew about the stories as a practical matter of reading them to develop what I thought was going to be a series, and I'm starting to read them, and they're not long, and they read pretty quickly, and they're addictive. They're really addictive. So I probably read in the development process close to 50 or 60 of them, and I have another 50 to go. But they're you keep thinking, oh yeah, I know what this is, and then you read the story, and you're like, oh, I didn't know what this was. Yeah. And so it's such a privilege to be able to have something to do with putting this work back in front of an audience, because there it is. It's this motherlode of brilliant stuff that just was kind of sitting around.
I'm bordering on illiterate. As I like to say to people, I read a book once, it was green. My introduction was exactly the same as Blade Runner. I had my mind absolutely blown by it for just that really weird world. There is an interesting fact about that. Do you know what a lot of the lighting was? Do you remember all that, the J.F. Sebastian's place and all that sort of stuff? The Who were rehearsing their stage show next door, and Ridley's producer went in and said, look, we need the fucking lights. They didn't have any money. And the Who gave them a loan of their stage lighting. And that's why a lot of that looked like that. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's in Shepperton or whatever the hell they were shooting at. But yeah, the Who were going to go out and tour. Yeah. So that's why a lot of that look is a lot to do with the Who. Yeah.
Wow.
No, you know what? It's very weird. I'd gotten a couple of moth-eaten, because they're dog-eared, a Scanner Darkly and all that sort of stuff. And sort of read. I'm a terrible man for getting in for a couple of pages and then having to go off and do something. I'm easily distractible. Some people call it ADHD. But I've always, even with Game of Thrones, I haven't read the books because the books are the writers' Bibles, and my Bible is what the script do with us. And I really didn't want any sort of cross pollination between the two, or come up with any ideas. Why aren't you doing this? That's not my brief. And if it's not in the script and I have to refer to the book, there's something wrong with the script as regards to characterization. So I very much went on board with this, facilitating what the ideas were and the philosophy, as you said, that the humanity and the dystopian, whatever you want to call it. So I just the facts, man. That's what I dealt with on this, and I just wanted to be part of the canvas of telling the story. But I'm definitely delving back in now. I need to get into these books. I'm ashamed of myself.
We'll send you some.
Please do.